Well, Ty, thank you for coming on, everyone. We have a guest today. His name is Ty Palmer, out in the great state of Texas. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, we're going to get into some of the cool projects you have going on out there. So introduce yourself, Ty. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a cool pleasure getting to know you a little bit through social media and getting on here. Yeah, from way out from where you guys are, out here in Texas. And I was born and raised way out in West Texas, close to the New Mexico border. My grandparents have a ranch out there, and so I kind of grew up out there. And then I've worked, I teach and coach is my real job. And then I've got a bunch of hobbies that have taken me around the world a little bit. And so now we live more in the Central Texas area. And so I've been all over Texas, and I've never lived outside of Texas. And so it's not one of those don't mess with Texas, wave my flag type deals. It's where all our family is, and that's where I've been born and raised, and it's where we'll probably end up staying. We kind of love it out here.
Yeah. And I can respect the don't mess with Texas. If there's very few places in the country I'd live, Texas is on that list, but not Houston. So
yeah, we talked about that. Houston is a different, Houston's a whole other world. It's inside Texas, but they could fence that part off sometimes.
Yeah. So I met Ty. He actually won the giveaway, our first giveaway. So I saw him, and then, when I clicked on his profile, I saw duck hunting and all sorts of fishing and stuff. I'm like, well, perfect person to have on. So you said you're a bio teacher, right?
Right. Yeah. I teach advanced biology, and then I've got a couple classes that are regular, but most of it is advanced placement honors biology.
Okay, nice. And then you said You're coaching what sports?
Yeah, I coach football and then track. I was a head football coach, athletic director out in West Texas for a while. And then we made a move to Central Texas area for our family. We've got some land and some cattle that we had to get closer to. And my grandparents live, you never can get away from water. My grandparents live on a lake. And so we're closer to there where we can go see them. And out in West Texas, not a lot of water. There wasn't a lot of fishing out there. And so we had to travel. And I fell in love with fly fishing. And I know that's weird being from Texas. You fly fish, you think of trout and those sort of things. But we've moved back this direction. And so, like I said, I teach and coach is my real job. And then, I get to guide duck hunts during duck season and fish all over and do some really cool things right there.
Nice. And so I have to ask, who's your college football team?
I honestly, nobody's going to have ever heard of them. It's where I went to school. It's where I coached there, Tarleton State University in Stephenville, Texas. They've just moved up to the FCS level. They were Division II when I was there. That's where I met my wife. She was an athletic trainer there, and I was coaching. And so I, by nature, living out in West Texas, my wife got her master's degree from Texas Tech University. And so I guess guns up, if you have to pick one. Living out there, you kind of get indoctrinated to it. And so we went to several Tech games because we lived about an hour from Lubbock, and it's hard not to buy into that culture. It's a cool deal. Most of my wife's family's Aggies. She's from a German town called Fredericksburg, Texas. A lot of people may have heard of that. It's kind of a touristy type area down there. And most everybody there seems to go to A&M. So we got a bunch of Aggies on both sides of our family. And so it's kind of a funny deal. She's got a degree from Tech, and both of us have one from Tarleton. And then I've got my master's from University of Texas of Arlington. And so I guess if I had to pick a Division I school, it'd probably be Tech. But truly Tarleton's where my heart is. It's where we met, where I got my graduated, kind of cut my teeth coaching.
Yeah, fair enough. And I was real sad to see what happened to Mike Leach passing a while back. He was a character.
Leach it was fun having him out there in Lubbock. He one of my very best friends actually was a GA for Leach, and got to know him really, really well. And so I never got to meet Coach Leach. You hear him speak at things. And so I got to hear all the Coach Leach stories, and he's a character, to put it mildly. I don't think there's another college football coach in the world that's got their fingerprints all over the sport more than probably Mike Leach. You look at his coaching tree, you look at the offenses in the country. Our offense here in Early is very, very based in Mike Leach ideas. It's not as air raid and crazy up tempo as he ran, but it's very based in that mentality. And so he was very influential, very fun guy to hear about.
Yeah. And We went when I was out in Houston. At one time, we went out there. We drove to Texas A&M because my wife's cousin goes to school there, and I'm from Florida. I'm a Florida Gator fan, so I'm used to big SEC schools and stadiums. That stadium there is massive. I'd never realized
Outfield
how.
is a cool place. If you've never been there on a Saturday, whether you're an Aggie or not, when they get to holding hands and swaying back and forth, it feels like the stadium's moving.
Yeah,
And it's a cool atmosphere to be in. I got to go and watch when back before UT and all of that, when that A&M went to the SEC and all that, when they were still playing, I got to go watch a game there. And that was a fun experience.
nice. Probably like our FSU or Florida, Miami
Yeah.
FSU games. Yeah, it gets rowdy. It gets
Yeah,
rowdy,
those are fun.
especially when there's Miami fans involved. Sorry,
Yeah.
Miami.
Yeah. You hear Miami, it's a different world. We, in the Division II world, we played in front of tens of fans, we didn't,
Yeah,
there wasn't 20,000, 50, 60, 70, 100,000 people. We were lucky
yeah.
to get 1,500 people in there. And now it's cool to go back and see Tarleton, their Division I FCS, and see the stadium upgrades and all of those things. And you feel like your tuition's gone to something now, so it's kind of cool to see.
Very nice. Very nice. So one more question about football before we move on to the duck hunting and fishing. Are you
Absolutely.
more of a defensive minded coach or offense?
No, I grew up as an offensive lineman.
Okay.
In high school, we only played one way. Our skill guys played both ways, but as a lineman, we played one way. So I played offense. I coached offense when I was at Tarleton. That's all that's what I've done my whole life. I was an offensive coordinator for 7 years and then got to be the head coach. And was fortunate. One of my very best friends was my DC. And I said, you got it. You run the show. And I stayed on the offensive side. And now, of course, I coach offensive line still. It's
Okay.
where my passion is with the big guys that kind of get kicked off to the end and nobody knows you're there until you mess up. I always liken the offensive line to secondary. Nobody knows they're there until they get beat for a touchdown. Nobody knows we're there until somebody gets sacked. And
Oh yeah.
so it's never your name in the paper and all those things. And so I've coached defense when I was on some smaller schools where you had to coach both sides of the ball, but my heart and my mind where I like to find myself on the offensive side.
Offensive line will make or break your team. I mean, look
It's a
at
very special group.
Yeah, Marino couldn't get much done. He didn't have the best O-line. So
Right.
yeah, set up the run. And I'm, fun and gun, Spurrier, Florida, SEC football. I believe in, the air raid, fun and gun. But I guess I could be a coach, I think, because I yell at the TV during the games enough. So,
Right.
But I'm
Come join us. It's a fun world. You better love it. I always tell new coaches, if you can see yourself doing something else, you better do it.
Yeah.
There ain't enough money involved unless you're those Mike Leach level, and
Yeah.
spend a lot of hours. We're in the middle of 2-a-days right now, actually. We started on Monday. Those days start about 5 a.m. and I rolled in the house about 10 minutes before I sat down with you. And so it's a grind, but it's fun. You get to see those kids excel and reach some levels and do some things that they wouldn't get to do on their own. And so it's a cool experience to get to be a part of.
Very nice. Yeah, I believe, the old saying is you run to set up the pass. I'm the opposite. I think you pass to set up the run. But what do I know?
When I was offensive coordinator, I've been on both sides of that spectrum. When I was offensive coordinator out in West Texas, we ran the veer. I mean, we were under center. Army's not going to be under center anymore. That's going to be a new look for everybody to see those guys backed up in the gun a little bit. But we were under center. We were running midline and veer and downhill football. And we threw the big joke was, I don't know why y'all throw the ball in pregame. You ain't gonna throw the ball in the game anyway. And we played 14 games, which is 2 games shy of a state championship in Texas, which is, you play 14 high school games. That's a long season. And we threw the ball 48 times in 14 games. And so and then the last year we threw the ball 40, 50 times a game. And so I've been on both ends of that spectrum. And I used to think I like to run the football. And then there's times you want to throw the football. I think at the high school level, we don't get to go recruit our kids here.
Yeah.
I know some states have different rules. We get what we get at the public school level. And so we try to fit what we do to what our kids can do. Last year we threw the ball a bunch. This year we probably won't as much just because the personnel dictates differently. And so my heart is based, I want to run the football. Of course, I'm an O-line guy. You find an O-line guy that doesn't want to run the football is, 3rd and 1, we want to run power. 1st and 10, we want to run power, and so,
Yep.
But they broke me down, and we throw some RPOs, and we do all that cool flex bone or the air raid stuff. And so I if I had to pick, I'd rather line up, run a football, and just mash somebody's face. It's a lot of fun to move somebody against their will and do what you want. But here we are.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of like fishing, do what works.
absolutely, absolutely.
So you are involved in triple threat outfitters, correct? And you're
Yeah,
also-
there's a young man here that graduated from early, and it's kind of a funny story. My bucket list bird, and people that are watching probably think I'm crazy if they're a duck hunter, was a wood duck. Out in West Texas, we didn't get wood ducks. And so I always wanted to kill a wood duck from the time I started hunting. I saw them online and all over social media and fell in love. And when we moved to Central Texas, I knew there were wood ducks. And so I sought out an outfitter that could get me on some wood ducks. And we went and hunted and had an unbelievable hunt down on a river and shot, well, limit of wood ducks is 3. So we shot 2 limits of wood ducks. And then we went and hunted again, and his name's Brandon Lambrano. And we got to be good friends, and it kind of went from there. He, at that point, he was just kind of getting started, had been going a little while. And it was Brandon's Waterfowl at that point. And all he did was duck hunts on private land. And, he has unbelievably exploded the past couple of years. And it has done an unbelievable job for himself. And so he's rebranded that and is now Texas Triple Threat Outfitters. And so when he's filled up or when he needs help on the weekends or whatever, I kind of fill in and help him out here and there. And whether that's scouting or whether that's setting decoys or that's actually guiding hunts or whatever the case may be, I help him out. I've got some land here that I hunt myself that is not mine that I own, but that I have permission to be on. And Brandon's reached, he's all the way up from the panhandle of Texas, all the way down to Waco in that area. He's got 80,000 acres that he's got access to, an unbelievable experience that he puts. He's into, he rebranded the Triple Threat because he's now doing ducks, crane, and geese. When I was out in West Texas, we did a lot of geese and hunted a lot of geese and crane. And then when we moved to Central Texas, there's not hardly any geese in this area. You've got to kind of get out to get them. And we've got a few crane. But I didn't realize how many ducks there were in this area until I got here. And it's unbelievable. That it just, when you move, people that aren't from Texas don't understand how big that is. When I say West and Central, some states that may be 45 minutes or an hour. That's 4.5 hour span from where I moved from. And the terrain is so different. Just the way you've got to hunt those birds is different. And Brandon has figured it out in this area and does an unbelievable job. And he's not very old. He's got a huge future ahead of him. And he does, he does taxidermy, and all of those things. And it's been a breath. It's been a breath of fresh air for me because, out in West Texas, it's so populated with outfitters and people that it's hard to get on land. And I was fortunate. My grandparents owned the ranch, so I had access to land. And there's not a lot of public land in Texas, which is, I know people that are all over the country think that's crazy because most states have a lot of public land. Yeah. In Texas, don't quote me, and if you guys are listening, don't bash us in the comments on this one or whatever. But I want to say it's like 98% private land in the state of Texas, and so there's very little public access. For waterfowl anyway, as far as that's concerned. Waterways, if you get in the water, you can go all the way down the river. And so it doesn't matter as long as you can get access to the water, you can go anywhere as long as you don't step on the land. Because at that point you're trespassing. And so he's done a great job of getting all that country that he can hunt and provide that experience for people. Last year I wasn't able to go on it. I was already committed to another deal, but he was able to take a young man who had some brain injuries and brain trauma on a hunt and do some things like that. And Brandon does out of the goodness of his heart. Those people, he found they were looking for some hunts on social media, and Brandon took them and wouldn't take a dime of their money. We all want to make money. You got to pay the bills. You got to keep the lights on somehow. But he does a job of reaching out and doing things like that. And that's a group you want to be with, and some of that. And then, we've got a guy that trains labs that works with us. I don't have a bird dog of my own. I'd love to, but coaching, I'm never home. And so I just don't have time to devote to a bird dog. And so he partnered up. He found a guy here in town that he trains dogs here and up in Ohio, grain driver Labradors that partnered with him. And when we go, like if I go and guide a hunt, or if he's guiding and needs more dogs, Ryan will bring his dogs. You know, he trains dogs from all over the country. He guided up in South Dakota. He's guided all over the country. He trains, got a place here and a place up in Ohio, right down the road from the NFL Hall of Fame. One day I'm going to Ohio with Ryan to see the Hall of Fame, and go hunt up there just because it's a different country, you know. And so he's branched out. He's partnered with them. He's partnered with Big Al's Decoys. He's got a bunch of brand partnerships that's in the works, that's really grown his company. And that dude I always joke with him about, did he take a bottle before we went to hunt that morning, you know, because he's a youngin'. And so he actually graduated from early where I'm working now, before I got here. But it's been cool to watch it grow and watch him succeed in the work he's put in. And I say I'm a part of it. I'm not really a part. He lets me hang out and wear a t-shirt, you know. But I
hey, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I get to go duck hunt.
You get a t-shirt.
Hard to beat that. People think you're crazy when you duck hunt. You're gonna get up at 4 a.m. and lay in the wet mud and shoot 6 birds, because that's a limit, you know. There's limits within that limit, but overall it's 6 birds a day. And you shoot some little teal and 6 birds you can hold in one palm of your hand almost, you know. It's crazy, but it's a high you can't buy if you've never been duck hunting. That's something that you can't understand until you see a big old greenhead mallard cupped up right in your face. And so that's an experience we try to give those people. And it's been a cool experience coming out here and getting to do that in a different part of the state, you know. I've chased birds all the way from Kansas down, you know, shooting big old greater geese in Kansas where their heads are as big as your hand, to the little bitty teal here in Texas that aren't much bigger than a pigeon, you know. It's a thrill. And my kids are 5 and 3, and they're going on their first duck hunt this year. We'll see how well that goes at 5 a.m. with a 5-year-old little girl sitting in the mud, and how long she can last. But try to pass that on to them, because nobody in my family duck hunted. My family, they were all mud ducks, and we ain't shooting them, and they're gross and blah, you know, all that stuff. And a gentleman in Seminole where we live took me duck hunting one day, and we shot 1 bird. It was windy, it was miserable, and we shot 1 bird, and I was hooked. And that was 14 years ago. And I've been hooked since, and trying to pass that on to anybody that'll listen to me babble about it. And so you guys are victims of it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to book a trip whenever I get some time. But for those listening at home, on Instagram at least, it's Texas Triple Threat Outfitters, and then the website is the same, Texas Triple Threat Outfitters. And I looked it up when you told me. So you have the ducks, the geese, doves, and I saw sandhill cranes here.
Sandhill crane, yeah.
Sandhill cranes, because here they're really just more of a nuisance. They're always walking around, see them all the time. I didn't know.
Man, have you ever eaten a sandhill crane?
No, I mean,
it's the ribeye of the sky.
So I've heard people say that, but it's not legal to, you know, take them here in Florida. But I didn't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise it. But
yeah,
if you ever get a chance to go somewhere and shoot a sandhill crane, we always tell people it's like shooting a dinosaur. I mean, if you guys have never seen one up close, they're big old birds. You know, I can sit here and I'm 5'10" and can hold my arms up, and their feathers stick out past my arms. You know, we've got pictures of my kids standing with me holding them up and them standing inside of it, and there's plenty of bird left. And so they are. If I had to pick one thing, and you told me I couldn't hunt nothing else the rest of my life, I'd hunt sandhill crane. And you guys up north where or even out east where it is illegal, and all those, you know, people don't get to hunt them very often. It's a thrill. You know, you hear them whistling and coming in. I say whistling, I don't want to make the noise. I'd sound stupid on here, but it's a cool experience, and you better put your big boy pants on when you go to get one of them. Most people that send dogs, they send them with goggles on, because if you've never, those sandhill beaks are, you know, 6-8 inches long. They're pretty sharp on the end. They'll peck a dog's eyes out. And so a lot of people won't send dogs to get them until they know that bird is dead. just because you put too much money and time into one of them dogs. And so sandhill crane are mean. If you've ever hunted very often, you've gotten spurred, you've gotten hit and things like that. And so it's we try to not send clients out to pick those birds up, obviously. But anybody who's never been on a sandhill crane hunt, that's something you need to do at least once. It's a lot of fun.
And maybe just because, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying they're a big old bird.
Yeah, I mean, maybe because they're hunted out there and they know there's pressure, but here in Florida, I mean, we have them in our yard all the time. They just walk around, and we always get like the same half dozen or so in the neighborhood, and they just walk around. They have their babies and they fly back, but they pay us
unbelievable out there then.
Yeah, they pay us no mind. I mean, you could walk right up to it and it looks at you and then just turns around and does its own thing. Like I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, it's like a cow walking around. It pays no attention to humans at all whatsoever.
They're extremely leery birds out here. I mean, you know, all waterfowl and all birds are, you know, they're visual animals. They're not gonna smell you like a deer or whatever. They're visual. But I mean, I didn't realize until I got into it, you know, the amount of blind and camo and how important that was, and hiding. You know, that's the majority of your hunt is how well you're hidden. I mean, obviously you got to be where they want to be. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna go lay in my front yard out here and call in birds. I live out in the middle of nowhere, but I'm not gonna get crane to land in my front yard. I'll get ducks because they fly over my house going from pond to pond. But you got to be where they want to be. But the hide, and like you said, a lot of it's probably pressure, and the fact that they are hunted here. We always say down here in Texas, when we shoot a duck or a goose or a crane, you feel like you've done something because those birds have been shot at since they left Canada, you know, and they make it all the way down to us and all the way back, you know, and so by the time they get here, you know, everybody uses a pulsator, they use the mojos, the spinning wing decoys and all of that. Sometimes down here, those are a nuisance, and they'll flare birds because they've seen every spread and every call and everything that exists since they left their nesting grounds, you know. And so by the time they get here, there's some days we have to get creative. There's some days we won't even hardly hit a call. You know, you make enough noise that they can see you or hear you from a ways out, and you'll shut the decoys off and shut the sound off because they've heard it all. You know, and so it's fun, but like I said, I'm sure a lot of y'all's deal is they know they're safe. You know,
probably.
We've got deer that come in and eat the flowers out of our flower bed, and my wife fights them all the time. You know, but
it's like seeing a Sasquatch, seeing a decent deer here.
Yeah. My brother-in-law. We've got some. Those people from Texas will know what I'm talking about. In Central Texas, there's deer everywhere. We're covered in whitetail, and he buys and sells exotics. Elk. My mother-in-law's got some elk on her place, and so we've got elk, and we've got axis on our place there in Fredericksburg, and it's constant exotics, and so it's that whole deal of, like you talk about, those exotics are. The elk, my mother-in-law, we've got pictures of my kids feeding the elk through the back fence out of their hand, and people listening in Colorado are, you know, they get in draws all year trying to go see an elk to shoot, much less, you know, we've got a 6x6 bull in my mother-in-law's backyard that my kids hand feed through the fence. You know, we don't obviously let them through it's high fence. We're not going to put them in there with them. That's asking for trouble, but it's just, you know, like you said, they know they're safe, and so I'd be foaming at the mouth sitting there watching sandhill crane walk around the backyard. We go to my grandparents' lake house, and their geese are like that. They've got, you know, they live about 2 hours north of us, 2.5 hours north. And the geese are there year round. You know, I tell my granddad, I'm like, I spend money and hours of my life laying in the mud to shoot one, and you can walk out and hit them with a fishing pole in the backyard if you wanted to. So it's just funny how you see perspective around the country on things like that.
Yeah, and I know it'll sound dumb, but I didn't even know we had geese in Florida until 4 or 5 years ago. I was up in like the Jacksonville area. I'm like, are those geese over there? I'm like, we get geese here? So we do a lot more snipe hunt. I haven't duck hunted in a long time, but I don't know if you get snipe out there, but that's what
we don't get any snipes. It's not. I've never been on a snipe hunt. It'd be something cool to do. There's the joke out here where you take people snipe
Yeah.
hunting, but it's not the snipe you're in reference to. I've been on one of those hunts when I was about 12 years old. My dad took me, and I thought, we lived on a ranch growing up, and so
Yeah.
we were going calling, and we went predator hunted and did all that stuff. And so we went snipe hunting one night, and he set me out with anybody that knows, if you know type deal. I'm sitting out with a feed sack behind a bush and a stick and making noise and think I'm calling snipes. He tells me to go move the truck, and he drives off and leaves me there. And if you've been, you know that story. If not, somebody tells you to go snipe hunting, you better make sure what kind of snipe you're going after. But I had about a 1.5 mile walk back to the house, and about midnight in the middle of the pasture, and with a flashlight and a feed sack and a stick. And so don't turn him in for child abuse. I ended up fine, but yeah, I've never been real snipe hunting. I've been we got you snipe hunting, but yeah, we need to get you out here and take you on a duck hunt. That's
Likewise. I'll be happy to take you snipe hunting. I mean, it's weird. Most of the time, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. Most of the time we'd hunt with, one earplug in, and our other ear, didn't have an earplug, because you had to hear them. And as soon as they take off, they make that screeching sound. You got to be up and ready, or else, they're gone. They say that's where the term sniper came from
Gotcha.
Asia, I don't even know where, but yeah, that's where the term sniper allegedly came from hunting those.
Learn something. Hopefully everybody else did from that. I did not know that.
Yeah, I don't know if I can be trusted. That's what the internet told me. So
it's on the internet. It's got to be true.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, everything is. Yeah, now, you talk about earplugs. That's something my wife wears me out all the time with duck hunting. Everything with your calls, everything is it's got to be on. Whatever the different calls and the different pitches, and they all mean something else. Whether it's a feeder chuckle, or whether it's a hail call, or whether it's a whistle, or whatever. And shame on me, but I can't wear earplugs when I hunt. Trying to call and do all that, it doesn't work. Yeah, I know there's companies out there that make those that are supposed to work with that, and you'd be able to hear through them. I've never had a pair, but eventually I might have to. My ears and my hands take a beating, because I can't wear gloves, because I can't feel the calls and my gun in my hand, and so I try not to. And when you get that cold and wet, my hands have been through sandpaper by the end of the season. But it's nothing some lotion and I guess a little TLC when the season's over doesn't handle.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder why we put ourselves through so much, but then we just go right back to it.
Yeah, you wake up and you're hurt and you're tired and you just keep going. You don't have a choice some days, but a lot of days it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now, out in Texas, do they make you use steel shot for ducks? What is that?
Anytime you're shooting waterfowl over water, it's a steel shot. You can't have lead in the bag at all. Whether that's not that you're shooting a 22 out of your 12 gauge, but you don't want a 22 round, a 30-06, it doesn't matter round. If it's lead, they technically got you. If the game warden was to show up and check you, and we get, we've been checked when you're an outfitter, you get checked in those things. As long as you got your paperwork, your permits and all that, ain't no big deal. But yeah, it's all steel shot. Technically, Sandio crane, you can use lead if you want to, because you're not hunting. If you're hunting them over water, it's a different story. But most people just stay with steel, so that if I do, because I use the same bag, I've got a bag that I carry, a blind bag, and that's all. I don't even put. If I go dove hunting, obviously I'm shooting dove loads, lead shot. But I've got a whole separate bag that I'll carry for that, just so there's no chance I forget one in it or whatever, because it's not worth. You get into federal regulated, because they're migratory birds. They're federal. That's not that you want to get into state violations either, but you definitely don't want to cross that federal line. You lose a lot of things and a lot of time and a lot of money breaking those federal birds. Yeah, it's a lot of paperwork, as far as the outfitting and making sure that you only shoot 6 birds and you don't overshoot and you don't, all of those things. And there's a bunch of different ways people do that. But it's something that's necessary, as whether it's fishing or ducks or deer or quail or whatever. If we're not the ones that are leading those conservation efforts, then who is? we all want to fish and we all want to catch, the share lunker program they have here in Texas with the bass over 13 pounds, and they take them and breed them and then turn them back out and all those things. If we're not the ones doing that, then our kids and our kids' kids are never going to experience that. And I feel like our job as outdoorsmen is to pass that on, pass that down. The youth hunts and the conservation camps and different things like that go on around the state, and things like guys like you that have started these podcasts. And social media has shrunk the world in so many aspects, and it gets such a negative light. And then you find something positive out of it, whether it's a fishing podcast that some kid may stumble upon and fall in love with, or it's, I don't know, somebody maybe listening that's never been duck hunting and they find a new passion, or it's, I had a gentleman take me fly fishing one day, and like I said, I fell in love, and like a bait casting rod is like voodoo in my house now. And I know that's crazy to a lot of people. My granddad makes fun of me. He's like, you cast 52 times and you don't even go anywhere, and so he's a big catfish fisherman. My father-in-law is a big jug fisherman and trot line. And he don't understand the allure to fly fishing at all. And so, but I just, like I said, I think it's our job to pass that on, and that's some of the way that we can do that, So
Yeah,
I don't know where I was going with that. I kind of got off topic, I guess, but get on my soapbox a little bit.
No, absolutely. And it's tough because there's so much crap on social media. Like the good stuff just gets suppressed down, and it's hard to get through the algorithm or whatever. I guess one of these days I might take a social media class and sit through it. I don't know how well I'll do at it, but it's tough. But we need to. I mean, that's why I have this company. Get kids out fishing. First responders with PTSD. Veterans. Really, that's all I want to do. That's why I made the company. Help kids and those that need help. Because fishing, hunting, I mean, it's therapeutic. So.
Yeah, you talk about the first responders and the veterans and all that. And my grandfather, they were military, and I honestly was goofing off on Google one day looking for military and duck hunts and trying to find something that might tie it together with it. Because like I said, nobody in my family duck hunts but me. And so when you go to a family reunion or you go anywhere and you mention it, they kind of look at you sideways, because it's not something that you realize it's very popular in the outdoor world. But when you get outside of looking for it on Instagram or Facebook or Google or whatever, it's not as popular as everybody thinks, as we all think in that industry. And like I said, I was looking for those things and stumbled upon a company that does just what you talk about with the veterans and first responders and all that, and Combat Waterfowl. And Robert Brewer owns that group, and it's based out of North Carolina, and it just stumbled upon it. And I got to know Robert. I actually talked to Robert yesterday about being on here and talking about those guys. And I kind of help. He's got a group that's called Combat Gunners, and I hate to say influencer. It's not an influencer because I'm not popular and got tens of thousands of followers and all of that stuff, but just kind of help spread the word of what he's trying to do. And it's a clothing company, and he's got hats and shirts and all kinds of stuff that they do, but it's based in the values of, if he is a veteran. And everybody that's in there is mostly veterans or family of veterans. I am not a veteran. I thank all you guys that are for your service. My uncle is a veteran, both my granddads, all of those things. And so, but the mission is like you talked about, trying to reach those people and help those people and do the veteran hunts and do some of those things that help benefit them, whether that's a benefit hunt or whether that's a fundraiser, or, he does all kinds of stuff to help raise that money. There was an accident last year, actually, that cost a young man his life that was a duck hunter, and he made a memorial shirt, and all the proceeds went to that family out of there in North Carolina. And he really, there's some funny shirts in there. It's based around comedy.
Everyone should go check it out. Combat Waterfowl. They got some pretty sweet stuff on there. I was checking it out. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to order some stuff.
Yeah, he's done a good job. He's got a couple of guys that kind of help him out with that, and whether it's just simple shirts or it's hats or whatever. They've gotten into the turtle box speakers even. I don't own one of those, but I've heard they're really cool. I'd like to have one day.
I don't even know if that is what that is.
They're a really, really, really high end speaker that's supposed to be fully submersible, waterproof, all of the above. Fishing world, it might be beneficial. I don't know why you want to play that kind of loud music when you're out fishing, but some people do, I guess. But no, Rob and those guys do a great job. Excuse me.
Only for the sandbar, no fishing.
Yeah, only when you're when the fish quit biting and red Solo cups are out. I guess you can play that music.
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys go check out Robert and those guys at Combat. He does a great job with all of it. It's a very tight community. You know, I don't know how many gunners there are on the page. I'd have to go look if I was lying to you. But he started in 2019, so it's fairly new. But he has exploded. And like I said, I'm just lucky to ride his coattail and be a little bit a part of it. You know, we all try to pitch in and help him. There's nothing to it for us other than the friendships. You know, we do a gunners hunt every year. Whether it's, you know, they go and hunt specs, you know, or they'll go out to Arkansas and do a flooded timber hunt or whatever. You know, we're trying to get one set up in West Texas, go do a crane hunt actually, because a lot of those guys are from the East Coast in that area where you don't get to hunt crane every day like we can down here. And so it's been a cool deal for just the camaraderie and finding somebody that shares your passion, you know. And like you said, kind of like your deal with the first responders and the veterans and all of those things. And they do a great job of that and trying to pass on that lineage, that idea of it. This past year, we had a traveling decoy. There's a gunner, Nick Browning, that makes hand carved decoys. And he had a canvas back decoy that he had made. That had the whole thing has a story from the rope it's tied with to the weight that's anchored, and it traveled around the country. And there was a book that came with it that you filled in the day you hunted and the weather, the conditions, the animal scene, what was killed over it. And so it traveled all over the place, you know, and I was fortunate to have it the last week of the season. And we had, I had probably the best solo hunt I've ever had in my life. As a guide and doing those things, there's something magical about hunting by yourself sometimes. You know, whether it's the solitude or it's the peace and tranquility, or it's sometimes it's not even about birds, you know, it's fishing. Sometimes it's not even about fishing anymore. It's just the being in nature and being away from all of that stuff. And like we said, 6 birds is a limit, 5 mallards, you know, you can't shoot 6 mallards, 5 mallards is a limit of mallards, but 6 total ducks. And I took a day off of work. Shame on me on a Friday to go duck hunt the last weekend of the season. And I went to a little bitty hole that I had permission on from some friends of ours. And I texted my wife when I got there and I said, I picked the wrong spot, you know, and she's kind of confused why. And about 300 yards away, they were drilling a water well that morning. So they're running tractors in and trucks in. And I'm like, there's no point in me being here, but I'm here, I'm committed. So I'm going to set it out. And legal light was 6:49, and at 6:54 the hunt was over. I'd shot 6 birds, 5 mallards and a pintail, which 1 pintail is a limit. That's kind of the golden limit in Texas. You know, you shoot 5 mallards and a pintail, it's like an unbelievable day. And I got to do it over that decoy from Combat Waterfowl. And they took pictures and it traveled, and you get those stories, you know, and you have people to share that with. Because a lot of people you put on there that you know, they don't understand that, but you can go on that and you've got those friends, and I'm sure you've got a group of your guys that are you know, in the same world in the fishing for you guys. And so it's a cool deal to have that camaraderie and that experience, and they've built that. And that's, you know, you go on there and read the about me and all that on their website, and that's what he wanted to create something that was more than a t-shirt, because we can all go on and make our own t-shirts now with Printify and all those different companies. It has made that world accessible to the average Joe. And he personalizes all of that stuff and tried to make it a community that happens to sell some things versus I just want to sell t-shirts and hats at the expense of whatever, you know. And so it's like your deal, you know, where you go on and look at all that stuff, and the conversation pieces, the sandbar shirt, you know, it's funny you mention that. That's the one I got, you know. And so I got to wear it at our family reunion the other day. My wife's family, when they all get together, they're German and Catholic. And so you can imagine how many people that is, just immediate family, there's like 75 people. And we go to Lake LBJ, which some people may know what that is. It's a constant level lake in Texas, in a really cool place. They rent out a whole area on the lake, and you got to wear it and have big fish fry and do all that. And it's a conversation piece. And so I don't know if you'll see any business off of it, but they definitely ask about it because we go spend time at the sandbar. All joking aside about it, we do. There's a sandbar out in the middle. Everybody drives their boat up on it, and it's not quite the salt water you guys are accustomed to, but it's Texas sandbar, I guess. It works. And so, but yeah, it was a neat deal. And like I said, shirts got the conversation started. And so, but yeah, I guess that's that, but like I said, it all goes back to doing what's right for people with your first responders and veterans. And so I know in the political climate we're in, I don't know, it's voodoo, but those people don't get enough respect and they don't get enough honor for what they do. Me and you were able to sit here, and you in Florida and me in Texas, and we've never shook hands and never personally met other than the internet. And we're able to sit here and do this because of people that did that for us, and it's unbelievable the things that they've gone through. My uncle doesn't talk about it much. Obviously, a lot of those guys don't. But what they did for me and you, and I think it goes unnoticed by a lot of people. And Robert, and those guys at Combat try to do that. You're trying to do that, and it's a neat deal to be a part of something that gives back to people who gave to us, and a lot of times don't get given back to when they come home. And so there's guys on Combat Waterfowl that are stationed right now in Alaska and all over the country that you get to hear from on there. We've got a kind of a private group on Facebook and their public Instagram and all those different things. But you get to communicate with people that again, we're talking about social media has shrunk the world. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you in Florida, and otherwise me and you would have never known the other one existed, but and that's the positive side of it. And you see the other side. And so I'm just glad there's guys like you that are fighting the good fight and trying to do it in a positive light, and steer that boat the right way.
Hopefully the tides will turn here pretty soon, and hopefully some of the useless stuff on there will fall to the wayside, and hopefully some of the more helpful stuff will.
It would be a blessing for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully. There's only
Keep fighting the good fight. Eventually it'll happen, maybe.
Absolutely. So as far as the hunting seasons go out there, how's that breakdown as far as, birds, deer? You have turkeys out there? How's that?
Yeah, we have turkey. Turkeys usually it falls well after ducks and all of that is over with. We kick off duck season. Depending on where you're at in Texas, obviously we're such a big area that it's not a blanket November 4th or whatever. Up in the Panhandle, when they start geese, it's November 4th. We start ducks November 11th or 12th in our zone. And then we're the only zone in Texas. We have a split in the middle of our season. So it'll go for a span, and then we have a week split where you can't hunt, and then it kicks back up again. And then the end of January 28th or 9th, I'd have to look at the calendar, the end of January, and down there, that area, the end of February, excuse me, I don't know why I'm saying January. The end of February, that's the end of our season, the 1st of February right there. And so deer falls in there. It all kind of runs together. There's dove season that runs part of it. You've got every season in the world going on. And so some of those times it makes it hard because you're going to hunt ducks in an area where they're going to hunt deer, and you got to know your landowners. You've got to know who else is on that property, obviously, because if they're trying to hunt deer, you're not going to be in there blasting ducks, because those guys on a deer hunt, they may set all season to shoot one shot, and the last thing you want to do is be the reason that guy doesn't get his shot at whatever it is he's after. And so that presents a challenge on some places. Of knowing where everybody's hunting and where they're at and not at, for that matter. But yeah, it kind of gets confusing there for a while. When you look at the Texas Parks and Wildlife does a good job putting all that out. But there's the Mallard Management Zone, there's the North Zone, there's the South Zone, there's the ever different zone, and you've got to know where you're at, because you're simply crossing an interstate and you're in a different zone. And it may be season here, but I go to that side of I-20 and it's not. And so you, like I said, you've got to know where your zones are, and it all, deer season and duck season and all of that overlaps, and goose season starts before ducks. And so you've got to be able to identify your birds in the air because there's an early teal season. And so you can go out and you may get other birds coming in, but all you can shoot are teal. And then of course goose season, it usually geese and ducks pretty easy to tell the difference. And obviously they sound way different, but you've got to know what you're doing. And so to keep yourself out of trouble, like we talked about being a federally regulated bird, that gets sticky with the game wardens and then the legal situation on that deal. And then of course trying to not interfere with other hunters, and treat them right. And then of course then turkey season kicks in after all that's over. And so turkey season's a lot of fun. I'm not a huge turkey hunter. I've shot turkey and done that, and I love to do it. But by the time duck season's over and deer season winds down, I'm ready for a little bit of a break. And so I don't get into the guiding turkey hunts or anything like that. Like I said, I've gone and it's a thrill, the thunder chicken as they call them out here anyway, getting to shoot a turkey. But no, it doesn't interfere and run at the same time. And so it's kind of spread out, so to speak, with those seasons there. But deer and duck and all that runs together. And so that presents a challenge. It really does.
Yeah, we in Florida, there's a lot of public land that you can go hunt out here, and it's very slim pickings. So, growing up, once I got to a certain age where I could tell my dad, no, I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
I said, no, I don't want to go after deer or turkey because it's really rough on public land out here. So all we did was snipe hunt, snipe hunt, snipe hunt. Whenever I want to go hunt, we go snipe hunt. So I've actually only shot one hog. I haven't shot a turkey or a deer yet. Believe it or not, I've spent tens of thousands of hours out in the woods, seen plenty of game, but I've actually never taken one. It's still weird.
Yeah, it's we talk about the deer eating my wife's flowers, and this morning when I was leaving the house, I had to slow down and let the deer run across the road in front of our house so I could get to work. But it's just, we, like I said, most of Texas is private land, which I'm very blessed and fortunate in that my family has land and that I have places I can go and hunt. But somebody who doesn't, it is very hard here in Texas too to shoot a deer, whether that's a whitetail or whether that's whatever you're after. And people realize that, and they charge a very, very high premium, for those deer. Now I've never been blessed to shoot one of those 280, 300-inch whitetail that you see, those high fence deer. I've shot some good deer, but nothing that's, 30-inch inside spread and all of those things. And so we've got some deer hanging on the wall in the house, and it's been fun. But I realize, talking to people, how blessed and fortunate I am. Growing up, I didn't realize that, because like I said, my grandparents had a ranch, and we shot pigs and we called, and bobcats, coyotes, deer, all of that, and I didn't realize that not everybody did that. Growing up as a little kid, that's all I knew. And so it's crazy to hear guys like you, who are in the outdoor industry and make a living doing it, that you talk about, I've shot one pig and not many deer or not any deer and all those things. And so that's the next bucket list for me is I want to get my kids into it. My daughter got to go last year, and she's bundled up over there with her little buddy heater, freezing her tush off with, as long as you give her some cookies every now and then, she's good to sit there and let her watch a video every now and then. And got to actually be we got to shoot an axis off. It was kind of a cool experience for me. She's 5 years old. At the time she was 4. She didn't shoot, but she got to be there on our land and our deer blind and our feeder, and then get to go through that whole process. And so you talk about passing it on and getting able to do that. And it's humbling to hear, people talk about, well, I've never gotten to do that. And then you're like, well, that's what drives me. And like I said, as an educator and things like that, is getting to help people experience that. The guy who was best man at my wedding, I got to take last year on our place, and he got to shoot his first deer. He's a big duck hunter too, ironically. we've hunted together a bunch of times, but he was like you. He was in the outdoor industry, loves to fish, but had never shot a deer. And he's 41 years old. And so I got to take him last year and get him on his first deer hunt. And it's, it's funny to see it wasn't a deer that you'd mount, it was a management buck but to him, it was, it was a Boone and Crockett, he's buck fever and shaking, and it's a fun experience to see. And I get more joy out of that now that I've been there and I've shot deer and done all those things to see that side of it for people that have never done it before. It's a cool experience.
Yeah, our deer don't get that big here, but I've seen some trophy whitetails. I've seen 2 or 3 trophy whitetails out here, plenty of turkeys, hogs. I've seen panthers, I've seen 3 panthers in my lifetime, which a lot of people don't, see panthers.
Never been on either end of that one. That one make me a little nervous.
They're a big kitty, let me tell you.
Yeah,
they're a big kitty. And even one of my dad's buddies, he works for South Florida Water Management or something. He was taking out a professional panther tracker estimator. They go in, they look for signs and estimate, what the panthers are doing, how many there are, things like that. So he asked him, how many panthers have you seen? And this guy gets paid to do it. This might be 10, 15 years ago or more, but he's like, I've never seen a panther in the wild.
It's unbelievable. I'm with him. I don't get paid to do that. I don't know that I'd be brave enough, but I've never been on that end of it. You hear reports of mountain lions and all those different things, especially out in West Texas where we were at. But I've never seen one. I've bobcats, coyotes, fox, all of red fox, gray fox, all of those type things, but never a mountain lion or panther or anything of that nature.
And would it be the same
hunt though? It'd be fun to see.
Would it be the same species? I know there's a little bit of variation once you get like closer to Mexico, right?
Yeah, a lot of them are the same genus, but your species might change a little bit based on geography. But there's hundreds of names that people go by, most of them when you get to tracking their lineage and all of those things, their genealogy, most of them are going to be the same genus, and the species may vary, obviously.
Yeah, when I was trying out to be a game warden for FWC, they told me, go volunteer at, animal places that'll help your odds, things like that. And I remember I was at one place and I was hosing out the panther doo-doo, and I'm, chain link fence hosing it out, and I just happened to look up and there's a panther like 8 inches from my face on the other side of the fence just growling. I'm like, all right, that's a little too close. So I walked around very abruptly to the other side.
Yeah, that's a big cat. Those are bobcat's too big of a cat for me to see out in the wild, much less something like that. They can still do some damage. But no, that's not something I've ever done or seen. I'd love to go. I've always wanted to go out to New Mexico and go on a mountain lion hunt, with the tracking with dogs and do all that stuff, but never been able to do that. That'd be interesting. I say I want to do it. I think I'm more in love with the idea of it than actually doing it.
Might want more than just the bolt action rifle. Might want something on my hip.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily a fan of not being the apex predator in my environment. You get in their world and you are not the biggest thing on the food chain, and that's a humbling experience.
And as far as your gear setup when you're going out, like when we would duck hunt or when we snipe hunt, we had an airboat. We'd go out, we'd take our shotguns out there. What's your setup? What is it like where you're at?
A lot of it depends on the water you're hunting. Obviously, as far as your blind, there's panel blinds, which basically is an A-frame. It's a panel in front and a panel behind, and then it's got like a headpiece that covers that you'll flip up to shoot. We've gotten into where we use a lot of Tangle Free there's tons of companies. We use Tangle Free just because that's who we use. I'm not plugging Tangle Free in any sense. That's what we use. But they're called a ground ghost, and it's just a wedge. It's just a big triangle. And then we'll use just ghillie blankets and pull up over. And then you pull stuff from the natural environment. You grass them in. If you're in a hay field, you're not gonna use cedar balls to cover it. Obviously, you're going to want it to look like it belongs where it's at. And then there's layout coffin style blinds that have the flip open doors and things that are bigger. The bigger the thing, the harder it is to hide, obviously. But depending on, are there trees there? Is it dirt? Is it whatever? But it's some form of layout blind or a coffin blind or a panel blind, box blind. And then decoy spread, that's where you make your money, is the hide in your decoys. And so, and companies have figured that out too. And so that stuff gets really, really, really expensive on you in a hurry. But the spread depends on what you're hunting, the body of water, where it's at, the wind. Because unlike deer, you're going to want that wind, kind of in your face, so they're not smelling you going out. To whereas waterfowl, you want it at your back, to where, because they're going to land coming into the wind and use their wings like a big old parachute, or you can hunt a crosswind. It just depends on the body of water. But your spread, I didn't realize when I first started, and I made tons of mistakes on my own before, getting to know Robert with Combat and Brandon and those guys, and Ryan, who's got the Grain Driver Labs. He's taught me a bunch too. Of how much your decoy spread matters. A lot of people think you just throw some plastic ducks out and lay in the dirt and here we go, quack, quack, and bang, and when I first started, I, to be quite honest with you, I didn't know. I just would go and throw some decoys out and blow on a duck call and get lucky. And I'm not saying by any means I'm a master of anything. I learn every time. It's all trial and error, but it depends on the body of water. The little place I hunted the last day of season I was telling you about, I had 13 decoys out, 12, and then the traveling decoy. And then if we're doing a traffic hunt where they're not necessarily using that body of water, but they're flying through that area from a feed to a loaf or a rest or whatever, it may be as many as 70 or 80 decoys. Now that's obviously a pretty good sized body of water that you're going to run 70 or 80 decoys on. You get into goose hunts, you may be using 15, 20 dozen decoys. And so it all depends on what you're after. But some form of your decoy spread and then you're blind. And so we try to hunt no more than like 6 to 7 people in a group usually, because that's a lot of blind frontage. Panel, whether that's a panel blind or it's layout blind, you cover a substantial square footage, and you think about how easy that is to spot from above, because they're not looking at it head on like me and you, and the shadows and all of those things you create. And so that's clear as mud answer. A lot of it, obviously, that I think that's why some of the lure for guys that hunt in big groups is to hunt by yourself, because it's very easy to hide one person in 18 to 20 decoys. It's not very easy when you've got 7 people laid out there on the ground to try to hide and make it look like it belongs in the environment. And so, being hidden and all of that, and obviously being where they want to be, but being hidden and covered up is a huge part of it. So trying to get that much gear in is a challenge if you can't drive up to it or use a four-wheeler or a side-by-side, a Can-Am, something. A lot of our places we can drive up to, but if you've got to pack in, that gets challenging, because you've got 6, 7 blinds and you've got 60 decoys, and you're wearing waders and wading through the mud. Oh, and it's dark, and you've got a little bitty headlamp on that lights up from me to that computer in front of me, and that's it. And so you try to be light as you can be and mobile, but some guys will. A lot of guys go and hunt out of boats, whether it's the lake. We've got a lake out here that people go and hunt, that public hunt out of boats. And then, whether you get on the coast, you get down on the coast of Texas, and it's a whole nother style of hunting, where some people will kayak hunt. I've never hunted out of a kayak. I know a lot of people that do it.
Yep.
Obviously those loadouts and those things are way different than hunting where we do here. And so, but here in West Texas where I was, it's same gear base, but obviously you set up a little different. Some of those out there were knee-deep playas, whereas here you're hunting water that's deep, Yeah. And so your rigs are different, and how you raft them up and things like that. But we we don't use a lot of the panel blinds just because it doesn't look as natural a lot of times unless you've got a bunch of grasses where you're at or a bunch of trees that you can get up against, or try to hide yourself. A lot of times we're in panel or layout blinds, whether that's the wedges or a true coffin blind. But it just varies a lot of times. Like I said, that's a hard answer to truly shoot you straight on. And so,
Yeah.
yes and no, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, we have some friends that'll, take their canoe or their john boat to like the no motor water, storm water treatment areas, they call them here, which are basically like gator farms and moccasin pits and cottonmouth pits. I'm like, I can think of at least a few other pretty manly things that I'd rather do than go that route for ducks.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about when we're waiting out to set decoys in the dark, the alligators. That's not something we worry about where I'm at. That might change my perspective. Louisiana, Florida, in that area, where if I go to set a decoy, I might or might not step on an alligator. We don't worry about that here. So
now, do you have
we've got the
water
snakes
moccasins?
and things like that? But sir,
do you have water moccasins?
Yeah, we do. Most of them are river or lake type.
Okay.
We don't get a lot of them in the small ponds. They can be. Obviously there's dangers there, but it's definitely not the alligators that you guys are dealing with. You see videos of people that are duck hunting and they shoot a duck and the alligator will get it. And I'm like, he wants it better than I do. He can have it. I'm not gonna again, I like being the apex predators most times. That is not a world I'm in. And so yeah, we don't deal with alligators here. That might change my layout blind idea if I was hunting where I had to worry about alligators swimming up beside me or whatever.
I got some pretty bad stories, more about snakes. But yeah, one day we were out snipe hunting. I shot 7 water moccasins in a matter of like 3 hours, snipe hunting.
I don't like the snake world. Those things that the nope ropes can stay away, they can stay by themselves. I'm not I don't like that world. Those things they can do their thing over there and I'll stay over here. But yeah, been fortunate, hadn't run into many snakes outfit. We hunt a river here. We've got a river. It's called the Pecan Bayou that runs through our area. And we hunted on there, and I've seen a few snakes, but they're always a ways away or swimming. I now know we've seen rattlesnakes and things like that. That's the thing we worry about more than anything. Of course, during duck season, it's so cold that's usually not an issue.
Yeah.
But this time of year, you're worried about rattlesnakes when it's we hadn't been below 100 degrees, and I can't tell you when. So that's our biggest snake issue. My grandparents live on the lake, so they get some copperheads and things like that. But we definitely don't do the alligators. I'll take the snakes over the alligators any day, I think.
I don't know. I might take the gators over the snakes. Last time we went out duck hunting, I can't remember when, but I remember it was Thanksgiving Day before. It might have been Thanksgiving Day. I went to step off of the airboat, and usually I'm, pretty, I know what's going on around me, and stepping into tall grass, I got lucky. I've had a moccasin bite my shoe before, but this was a big boy. I stepped 1 foot on the boat, 1 foot on the bank. There's a moccasin right in between me, so my other foot came over pretty quick, and I was gone pretty quick. But
time to go. He can have that spot. We'll go hunt somewhere else or fish somewhere else. I don't know. I try not to deal with them very much.
Now, what's it like fishing out there? Because I've heard that there's not that many natural lakes with bass in Texas. What's the fishing like out there?
Depending on where you're at, obviously, I mean, you get East Texas. There's Lake Fork, which is pretty known in that world. OH Ivy, which is a really big bass lake here. But as far as there's not a lot of there's a lot of water, but there's not a lot of big lakes. Very few are natural. There's more, a lot of them are man-made. And they're all pretty much stocked with, you can catch a lot of largemouth bass. Smallmouth are more limited bodies to different bodies of water. Obviously, you can catch sunfish almost in your front yard. I mean, they're anywhere there's water, you're going. Everybody here calls them perch. We know it's a sunfish. not a true perch. But you convince some people down here that they're not a perch, and it becomes fighting words, you know. Crappie, all the types of cat, yellow cat, blue cat, channel cat, all those type. Largemouth bass, very popular. Being a fly fisherman, one of the biggest joys is trying to catch cichlids. You know, you get in the Guadalupe River, you can catch cichlids there.
Okay.
Guadalupe bass, which is actually the state fish of Texas, they've almost been. The Guadalupe is one of the only places you can catch natural, true Guadalupe bass, because they'll interbreed with smallmouth. And so in certain bodies of water where there are smallmouth, you may catch them that look, but they're not a true strain of the original descendants of Guadalupe bass. But largemouth bass are in most lakes. Stripers, hybrids, all those type things. You get up Lake Texoma, which is right on the border of of Texas and Oklahoma. It's a big striper lake. Lake Bridgeport, where my grandparents live, I guess you'd call it North Texas, for lack of a better way to describe it. There's a lot of white bass, sand bass, hybrids, things like that up there. But most lakes will have largemouth bass. Now, you get into private ponds and things like that, people stock. The problem is they get so overpopulated that you get a ton of 1 pound fish, which that's still a joy to catch. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'd rather catch 1 pound fish than no fish, but everybody wants that 5, 10, 12, whatever. Everybody wants to catch those. And so, there's not a lot of natural lakes per se, but there is a lot of bodies of water. When I was out in West Texas, there's not a lot of water out there, obviously. You're not in the desert, but you're pretty close. As you get east in Texas, you start to pick up more water. Where we're at, we've got, like I said, a lake. Hang on, my daughter's coming in. Hang on, Gracie.
All right.
We've got a lake right about 20 miles from our house. It's Lake Brownwood. And then we've got the bayou that runs through. And then you can go, you know, like I said, we went to our family reunion. It's about an hour and 45 minutes. You're on another lake. My grandparents about 2 hours north of us. There's a big lake. And so there's lots of water. It's just a matter of, you've got to pick your species, you know. Best eating fish, in my opinion, it's crappie. That's what I love to eat. Very, 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 I guess, delicate when you cook, very soft white fish. We don't, obviously, we're 4.5, 5 hours from the coast, so we don't get a lot of that saltwater fish type environment unless we choose to go there. We're not close enough to go do that. I love chasing the trout right there in Matagorda Bay down in Texas. That's a lot of fun. One of my bucket list trips, I want to go sight fish reds with my fly rod. Chase those tails out of water and in the shallow water and sight fish fly for redfish. But in our area, you get all the bass and all those things, but not near the variety of species you guys have out there in Florida, obviously.
We have a lot of invasive species. I was going to ask you if you've made it to Galveston or Corpus Christi, because that's one thing on my bucket list. I want to go there. If I don't know if I could do it there, but if you come to Florida, I could put you on peacocks. I could put you on redfish on the fly, no problem. But
that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, we actually went to Corpus Christi, Galveston. We went to the coast for my kids for a vacation this summer. We didn't go fishing. We went because my kids had never been to the beach, and I know you guys in Florida think it's crazy. Your kids never been to the beach, you know.
Hate the beach.
But here in Texas, it's a long ways to the beach if you don't live right there. And so we went, but we didn't do any fishing. The only salt water I've done, like I said, we went and chased the trout down in Matagorda, and we caught reds, but it was with a bait cast rod and those type of things, spinning rod. But hadn't done a lot of salt water, just geographics, where I live.
I must say, you're kind of. I'll put it bluntly. You're kind of in BFE, but I love it.
We really were out where I was at in West Texas. We've gotten closer to. My wife says we did our 40 years in the desert. We've been delivered. We loved it out in West Texas. If any of you are from West Texas listening, don't come hunt me down. We loved it out there. It was awesome. We went for 2 years for her. She was the head trainer for Texas Tech cheerleading. and got her master's degree. And we were going to go spend 2 years, and we spent 9. It was unbelievable. 9 years, had both our kids out there, all of that stuff. But we've gotten back closer. Just for reference, where we're at, we're about 2 hours from Austin. We're about an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours southwest of Dallas, Fort Worth. And so we're in a small area, not heavy populated, but we can be in the middle of those areas in like, hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours, which is awesome for us. Yep. I grew up in a little bitty town. We had 2 stoplights, and we were excited when we had a traffic jam and the cows got out. We grew up in one of those little towns. And so Same we're a small school. We've got like 350 kids in our high school. Some people listening may say that's a big school. I guess it's all relative. But we're a fairly small school, and we like it. We love that small town where we're at, but we're close enough to be in the middle of Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin. I don't really want to go to Houston just because the traffic is crazy, but we're about 3.5 hours, 4 hours from Houston. And so it's relative, I guess, to where you're at. That 2 hours in Texas is not very far. 2 hours in some states, you're a state away. And so, but we're close enough to those things, but we're a small town. And like I said, we don't get to the coast very much just because it is 4.5-ish hours. Most of ours is rivers. That's me and my wife both loved it. We'd rather spend time in the river than anywhere else, because the Pedernales River runs, and the Guadalupe River and all that through the hill country, the Frio, all of those areas. We go every summer, and where our land is in Fredericksburg, the Pedernales isn't far, and we've got public access to it where you can just wade for as far as you want to go in either direction. And it's beautiful scenery. It doesn't look like you're in Texas. It looks like trout streams up in Colorado, some of it. And obviously there's not trout in those areas, but it's what it looks like. So we love spending time in the river and letting our kids wade up down the river. But I'd love to come out there and chase reds. That's always been a big deal for me. I don't know why. I've fallen in love with that idea. It'd be a fun deal to do.
Yeah, I've kept you longer than I said I would.
I'm
Thank
good
you for that. But yeah, if you ever make it to Florida, we'll go after some peacock bass, redfish, trout, snook. We'll go offshore fish for mahi. If it's snipe season, we'll go snipe hunt. I don't know if we'll try our lucks with ducks, but yeah, I'll definitely put you on.
Come to Texas. We'll go shoot ducks. We'll get you on some birds. It'll be a good time.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. And I thank you for coming on. Real quick before I let you go, though. So, number one, Texas Triple Threat Outfitters.
Yes, sir.
And do they have to go pick up a hunting license, or do you?
Yeah, you've got to have a Texas hunting license. So if you're out of state, obviously you got to buy the license. You got to have your duck stamp, because that's a federal stamp. That's not a Texas thing. That's whether you're hunting ducks in anywhere from the north of the United States down, you've got to have your federal duck stamp, sandhill crane permit. You've got to have all those licensings. We can't. That's not something we can provide or we can issue. You can go to Texas Parks and Wildlife and get those, or once you got to Texas, if you're not from Texas, you can go to any outdoor store and pick one of those up. And so you got to have that. Then obviously your own gun and ammo, but everything else is taken care of. And
do you rent guns, or it's just bring your own?
No, you bring your own.
BYOG.
I guess if you had a special situation, you were flying, I don't know. You could, Brandon could make some arrangements, because obviously we've all got multiple. He's got several. But he could make those arrangements. Most people will bring their own, obviously. Gun and ammunition's kind of on you. Obviously steel shot, no lead shot there, but that's kind of the biggest deal.
Yeah. So everyone listening, all 2.5 followers, go check them out. And then Combat Waterfowl. What else do you have that you want to let the folks at home know?
Those are the two biggest deals. Like we talked about the youth conservation. There's a group called Texas Brigades that they're a conservation summer camp for kids. I help work one around here, our area, that uses. It's a leadership and very intensive leadership and public speaking camp that uses quail as a vehicle to do it. Kids got the radio track. We put radio transmitters on and set them free, and they use VHF frequencies, and they track these quail and recapture these quail, and they have to prepare speeches and land management plans, and it's very, very intensive. That we get to take kids out that have never been exposed to any of that, and they get to shoot. There's a shooting contest we do with it, and all kinds of stuff that we run around this area. I say we run. I just get to be a small, very small pawn in that game.
As long as you get a T-shirt, that's all that matters. As long as you get a T-shirt, that's all that matters.
Yeah, we got a few T-shirts. But no, we get to teach them about conservation, whether that's land conservation or water. There's different ones. They have a coastal brigade camp that does the whole coast thing. There's a waterfowl camp. There's a bass camp. It kind of fits more in lines with your deal, the coastal and the bass one. There's the waterfowl camp. Like I said, there's the quail camp. There's a ranch camp. If kids want to go into ranching, it exposes them to those things. They prepare political speeches, like they're talking to lobbyists. They are poster presentations where they're going out in the community and presenting those posters to help develop those public speaking skills. And it's run by some very, very important people. In ours was in the quail world, obviously. The Quail Research Foundation out in Rotan, Texas. They helped Dr. Dale Rollins kind of started that. And he's done a great job. I was blessed to get to go this year. One more time. Was his last camp this year. He started it 30 years ago, and this was the 30th camp. And he says he's retiring, but we're all going to twist his arm and make Dr. Dale come back, and nobody can put on a camp and interact with kids like Dr. Rollins does. And so we do some of that as far as trying to pass that lineage on, like we talked about early on about kids and getting kids involved. And it's an expensive camp, but there's scholarship opportunities and things like that available for those kids. It's the most intensive camp I think that you can do. Like as a leader, it was Sunday through Wednesday, and we slept like 9 total hours the whole time. And I know people are going, that's crazy, but it is. And we intentionally lock ourselves in a big house full of high school kids. And you have your group and they're out in the field, they're collecting plants. They're, like I said, they're radio tracking quail, and they get to do that. They get to learn how to be out in the wild and how to investigate. We let them see quail nests and figure out what happened to those nests, what predation got them, or why. What can we do to help protect those? Because quail numbers are on decline in all across the world, really. But specifically here in Texas, we're seeing a huge decline in quail population because everything eats a quail. And so trying to use one to get awareness out that. Cross our fingers, it's looking like a great quail season's coming up. It's the best one since 2017, which was a big season for all of us that chase those little birds. But it just uses different species that somebody's interested in to teach the same things. And when you go to camp, you talk about, well, we're better than this camp or that camp, just kind of jarring fun at people. But they're all under the same heading. It's the Texas Brigades, and they do an unbelievable job of teaching leadership, public speaking. You'll see kids that come in and they're sheepish and head down, and when they leave, big old broad chest, and they're talking. Every kid gets what's called a silver bullet, and it's their quote. We all got one. Even as an instructor, we get our quote, and you stand up in front of the whole room and you deliver your quote word for word, what it means, all of those things, and you got to give your little war cry at the end. And it's a whole nother deal that people don't understand unless you've done it. But you wear a piece of coal with your name on it when you start. And we talked about making diamonds and pressure and heat and all those things. It gets very sciencey to try to teach some kids things. But once your group delivers, everybody in it has given their speech, you actually get your name tag. That's your diamond. You have, part of it's over. And so, but they've got to speak and they've got to do things that they're very uncomfortable doing. And we purposely put them in those positions to try to encourage that, and some of them, you see them rise to the top. You see them do things that they couldn't do when they got there on Sunday. They're unrecognizable later on. And so that's the joys of it. But that's a really, really cool organization that, again, just by getting to know people through hunting and the outdoor world. Actually, a kid in my class, his dad is very high up in parks and wildlife, and he comes and presents to my AP kids, my biology kids. and his son presented about the brigades. He went, he was trying to earn points to get his way back to camp. And I talked to him afterwards, thought that'd be kind of cool. And here we are. I've been going for a few years now. And so it's a neat deal. It really is. They do a lot of fundraisers, and they can carry that all the way up into college. You know, there are guys there that Dr. Ryan O'Shaughnessy, who's been all over the world, is a very, very well known in the bird world. He's part of it. Like I said, Dr. Dale Rollins, who graduated from A&M and has his name all over that campus, is a big part of those camps. And so those kids get to meet people in that world that they wouldn't normally have access to. Not that Dr. O'Shaughnessy and Dr. Rollins and the lawyers that are there and things are too good for you, but it's putting kids in place with people that they wouldn't normally get to meet, you know, and it opens those doors for them. And it carries all the way through until they're 22, 23, and they graduate. There's a group that they travel and they present in Austin, and they do those things to expose them to those things, and make them speak publicly, and do all those things. But again, it goes back to the same mission that you talked about, you share, of getting kids involved. You know, we've got kids that'll show up that their math teacher thought they needed to go because the math teacher's kid went, and that kid's never shot a gun in his life, and you get to see them do those things. And then you've got kids that, you know, one of the campers we had this year, his dad is very high in the chronic wasting disease. If you've had anything to do with white-tailed deer, chronic wasting disease is a scary topic in Texas, at least. I'm not sure about the rest of the country, but in Texas, that's a scary deal. And his dad, he's grown up on a ranch, and his dad's really high in the Parks and Wildlife Chronic Waste Division. And he was at camp. So you have kids all over the spectrum, you know, and you get to see them work together and come together in a group. And it's a very cool atmosphere to get to see and witness. But it all goes back to outdoor education and conservation and having a mission. And they do. It's very in line with yours, you know, as far as a lot of the veteran first responder youth and those sort of things. And it's a cool deal to get to, like I said, be a part of and get to go do every summer. It's a breath of fresh air. Like I said, I get paid to teach and coach. That's my real job, but I try to stay in the outdoors as much as possible when I'm not on the sideline somewhere.
Yep, I understand that completely. It's Texas Brigade.
Texas Brigades, yeah, it's a cool deal.
I'll link it, you know, in the description and on social media. But is there a website or Instagram anywhere people can go?
It's texasbrigades.org.
Okay, and then you said there's a scholarship. Can people donate through there, or?
Yeah, people can actually make donations. There's a you can contact them on there, and they can get you set up if people want to make donations or people are applying to go. We had a kid this year who actually, I said the math teacher, his math teacher recommended he go because he had expressed some interest in the outdoor world. He lives in the middle of a big city, had never hunted, never fished, never anything. And her son went through it, and he had expressed some interest, and she actually scholarshiped his way to get in. And so one of the cool things that we do there is one night it's the thank you card night. And so anybody that donates anything, those kids sit down and they write thank you cards, and it's a contest. I mean, they're not thank you for your money, appreciate it, Bob. I mean, there's 7, 10, 12 line thank you cards with their pictures and letterheads, and they get to learn how to do that. And they address the envelope. It's amazing how many kids can address an envelope. I didn't.
Or adults.
Yeah, or adults for that matter. But when you give a kid an envelope and they look at you like, what is this? How do I do this? You know, and you got to show them where the return address is and but they get to do those things, and they give back to those people. But yeah, people can donate. They do unbelievable, crazy raffles. The Bass Brigades camp actually gave away a couple of fishing trips. They give away custom fly rods, spinning rods, all kinds of things, different raffles they do through the site to try to, because those camps are expensive to put on. You know, when you're having a shotgun shooting contest and you've got 30 kids
That's
and they're shooting, you know, you go through clays and you go through shells and you go through food. The food there, it's not your normal camp food. It's unbelievable food. I mean, all those birds, you know, we set loose birds, you know, and you hope you find them. You know, when they track those radio collars are expensive. You know, that's the same equipment that they'll use in graduate school, and they get to do it as a high school freshman. And so they're expensive, but it's unbelievable work that we get to do with those kids and to see that change in what they learn. We use animals we just use animals as a vehicle, to teach the same things that I hope, whether a kid is an outdoor kid or they grow up in the city, that you want our youth to have, be able to speak to people, be able to organize and time management and talk. I think we've lost that communication factor a lot of times.
Mhm.
And so it uses animals as a vehicle is all it does, whether that's ducks or that's quail or that's bass or that's vaccinating cattle. They get the hands on, but they learn it that way. So yeah, you can donate through there.
Is it open to kids in other states?
Most of it is a Texas based deal. We've never had one at any of the camps I've been in that are out of state, but we can try and see that. But like I said, whether you want to apply to go or you're wanting to help out or whatever, that's all available through there. It's a really cool opportunity for kids that may not get an opportunity otherwise.
Well, fair enough. Well, Ty, I'll let you get back to the family, but I thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story with us.
I appreciate you having me. You guys keep up the good fight, and we'll keep plugging along and maybe get this social media thing changed like we talked about.
Yeah, we'll give it our best shot.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you, Ty. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Get you soon. Yeah.
All righty. Have a good one.
Hit me up.
Yes, sir.
See ya. Thank you.
Uh-huh.